We'll call the meeting to order. Mr. Fortin, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, roll call. Michael Doherty, present.
Present.
Ron Cabana.
Here.
Roy Brad.
Here.
Glenn Leslie.
Here.
Dave Richardson.
Here.
Mike Bernardi.
Here.
Jeffrey Keller.
Here.
And my name is David Fortin. I'd just like to note for the record that I requested, I was late in requesting that the Board of Town Clerk should put on the town website that our February meeting was canceled. I've asked her to do that. For anybody who might be following along, they'll see our agenda and they'll see a cancellation, but I also felt it important to note it tonight for the minutes.
All right. Next order of business is to see an alternate, which is not necessary. Approval of the minutes for the January 8, 2019 regular meeting. We have a motion to approve.
I'll make some motion.
Second. All right. We have Mr. Ford motion, and Fred has seconded. Discussion. Go ahead, David.
Page 3, item C, third paragraph, 8th line. It says D. Richard said. Obviously, that's Richardson. The next page under public comment, 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph. I think that reference in the next to the last line says D. Richardson said cuts should be placed in priority order with Dave Fortin. Because I don't think I said that, I think he said that.
Remember that, David?
What paragraph, Dave?
1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph under 8.
Yes, I'll agree to that.
Anything else? All right, hearing none. Motion to accept the minutes as amended.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And one abstention. Mr. Bradford. All right, next order of business is public comment. Do we have any public comment at this time? Going once, twice? All right, move on. Old business. State budget update. Karen, do we have anything?
Well, we did receive something from COST, which is Council of Small Towns, just kind of giving a briefing on what kind of grants and things that we can expect. And at this point, they're stating no steep grants. So I know that that was something that we were talking about utilizing towards the bridge project.
Yes.
So I really don't think we're going to be getting those. We did receive another payment from ECS, which is Education Cost Share Grant, in the amount of $1,287,961. That was on January 30th, and we received some excess costs for the Board of Ed, $391,957 that came in. I do have some, numbers that we can expect in aid that came from the state budget proposal that I've been working on. I don't have any definitive numbers for you as of this time. I put Prop 46 right now. I'm still kind of working on that. Other than that, other than what everybody else has probably looked at from the state, as far as, what kind of aid we're going to be getting. I did notice a few cuts and some things that we were utilizing, not big, but it doesn't look like we're going to be getting veterans, reduction or disabled.
Karen, is that the steep grants at this fiscal year?
Yeah, it looks like we're not gonna be getting, I mean, we were awarded the steep grant several years ago for specific bridges and for the transfer station, and they were just not utilized. And, now we have the projects underway, we were hoping that, you know, we'd be able to have some of that money, but what it's stating right now is no steep grant money is being funded. That's the last I heard, and that came from cost, which is the Council of Small Governments. There was a letter sent to the different, selectmen.
Did CCM say anything about that?
I haven't heard anything from CCM. I actually went to meet with our Lieutenant Governor. I sat with her and discussed those, and she did specify that that was one of the things that they would ask OPM on behalf of the town of Woodstock, but I haven't heard anything back from them either.
Thank you, Chris.
Karen, the ECS grant, is that coming along as anticipated?
It is coming along as anticipated. So basically, for fiscal year 18-19, we budgeted what was proposed at the time, which was a little over 4.6 million. To date, they're stating we're getting over 5.1 million. So right now, it's like a $477,000 increase over what we budgeted. And the two payments that we received are 50% of the 5.1 million. So whether or not the balance in April changes, but that's what they're, you know, telling us right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? All right. Update on local bridge projects. Michael's not here, so.
I don't really have any big news. I know that CME has already started going around and looking at some of the bridges. I noticed that they were on Butts Road the other day, and I think that they're starting to do their, you know, preliminary engineering. And we're still trying to get the Butts Road Bridge in the state bond program. I don't know if that's really gonna pan out, but Pat Boyd had just replied to us and asked us for a more definitive breakdown of cost, you know, for each particular part of the project. So John Navarro had sent that over to him, but other than that, I don't really have any other, you know, we're nowhere near any, you know, not even prepared yet to go get any type of bid or any type of financing at this point, and I don't see that for at least another year.
Thank you. All right, next thing is school cost comparison. Glenn has asked that we put that off again for another month, give him a little more time to get some more numbers together and speed up the process. But tonight's meeting with the budget presentation, so with everybody's approval, we'll
Do you want a motion to table that
that
till
would
next
be,
month?
that would be good.
I would move to move the school cost comparison to the April meeting.
Second.
All right, we have Mr. Fortin and we have Mr. Lessig on the motion. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried. All right, CNR open space. You all got a letter there in your packet regarding that. Basically, the Hope For program that we had talked about fell through with the state. Good old state. So we had approved $11,000 to be used to pay for the assessments on those properties prior to their going to open space. That's no longer needed, so we want to move that amount of money back to our capital non-recurring.
Yes, which I did, and I have some information on the update on CNR, just so you know that where we stand at this point.
Okay.
So right now, in uncommitted capital project funds is $149,894 available. And that is with the $11,000 put back.
So, I have a question. Does this require an action, considering that the chair of the Open Space Farming and Preservation Committee requested at the town meeting that the agenda item be withdrawn? A motion was made, it was seconded, and it was voted to withdraw. Does this actually require a action, or should it just automatically go back?
I
I
don't,
mean,
I,
it's all-
I
it's all
think
in the minutes.
it normally should just be closed out and returned back to undesignated, because we, before they revoked it, we did commit it to a specific project, and now we wanna take it out of that committed project and put it back to undesignated, so you should close it out and vote on it to do that, even though they revoked it at the town meeting prior, I mean, you know, before that.
I think for the record, we should have a motion to remove that committal of those funds. Someone like to make that motion?
Unless somebody else wants to.
So moved.
All right, Mr. Lessig made a motion that we remove that money that was committed to the open space, be removed and put back into capital non-recurring,
Uncommitted.
uncommitted capital non-recurring. Do you have a second on that?
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Bradford seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
So is that clear enough for you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Solar update, Mr. Richardson.
Everybody received the report. Based on the first 6 months, we should be looking at something in the high 30s, close to $40,000 for overall margin for the year. For the next couple of years, we should be expecting numbers that are around $35,000 a year. But that's barring any dramatic changes in generation rates.
Somebody cleans the snow off on the panel.
Keeps the snow off the panels, yeah, that would help. But, you know, it should stay around $35,000 a year. What you'll see after, about 2 years from now, is you'll see the numbers start to drop. And it'll just slowly drop down. It's not quite linear, but it's reasonably close. And the end of the next 15 years after that, it'll be down to about 55% of what we had in the beginning. So you'd be looking at numbers that are relatively around $20,000 a year, 18,000 to 20,000. I think at this point, it should be pretty obvious to everybody that the numbers that were thrown out there at the beginning of this project had no basis in reality. You know, we had all talked about it at the time and said, well, we need some data. Well, we've got a year and a half's worth of data, and it's just not real. It's going to be more like $300,000 to $500,000 if nothing goes wrong. Mike's not here tonight, but I mentioned, I think the selectmen, you know, once things settle down with the town attorney, and he's not buried in other stuff, they might want to have the town attorney review that contract. We had been told when this was put in place that it was done with the participation of no one except for the Board of Selectmen, because there were no costs to the town in the way, done the way it was. My concern would be, there's a significant amount of liability. Now, Alan had said that there was no increase in cost on insurance. If that's truly the case, something's a little odd, because the liability up there is, you know, 7 figures.
But I think the person that owns the panels, which is not the town, actually pays the insurance on it, Dave. I'm not 100% sure.
That's
If
what-
that's what they said, or,
The way that contract is written, it's the town that owns the liability under certain, you know, any natural causes thing, anything to do with security, the town owns. And that's why I'd suggest that they might want to have the town attorney review that contract.
I'll run it by Mike. I will.
Just to make sure, because I read it several times, and I can tell you, I wouldn't sign that in 100 years, but I'm not an attorney. He might be more amenable to risk than I am.
questions, anyone?
Dave, you had an opportunity to look at create a degradation chart based on the output or anything? I know you spent a lot of time on this, otherwise I wouldn't ask you this question.
Yeah, they're actually, we don't have enough hard data because we've only got, 3 data points that are really close together. But if you look at the original proposal, it actually had a degradation chart in it. And I haven't plotted it out.
Yeah, you have like 15, 18 data points now of attribute data. 30 would be better, but I mean, it's usually different.
It's less about the number of data points than the fact that they're very close to the zero line. So you can't really project anything. And if you look at the stuff that we were given, that blue sheet, I mean, I can send you that plotted out, but what it is it does this over time. Well, this point out here is probably about 6 years out. So if you look at anything in the first 5 or 6 years, it's meaningless. It's only when you get out past that it starts to do this. And it drops down to, as I recall, it's about a 45% drop off at year 20.
Thanks.
All right. Move on to new business. Next thing is the 2018 grand list. We did have an increase in the grand list. I did have Karen pass out a letter that Mike typed up regarding the issue with the farms. Apparently, over the last several years, there's a method that we're supposed to use to approve the abatements on tax relief for farms and fruit October each year to participate in that. And we're allowed to award an abatement up to 50% by state statute, which is good 4 or 5 years unless the property is sold. At that time, then there are other things that come into play. But in order to qualify, number one, you have to have filed a request to be accepted into the program. But as I say, that hasn't been done. For this year, basically one of the growth factors in our grand list was the new tax assessor. Did not take that into consideration because it wasn't implemented, but our past assessor had actually been, rather than giving a percentage abatement, had been reducing the actual property values accordingly. So for this year, that's going to amount to about a $13,000 difference in what our growth in the grand list actually is.
So, can
Well,
I?
go ahead, Karen.
All right, I talked to Emily today, who's our assessor, and she, I asked her about the 13, and she said that right now, it's about $11,591, and it attributes to, I had it written down, and I'm sorry, all this paperwork misplaced it, but it was over 400,000 in the assessments.
Yeah.
So originally I had sent the board kind of my guesstimate of what the grand list would generate, which was about 180,000.
18209.
Yeah, and that's gonna change, just by, you thought 13, I said 11.5, so somewhere in that vicinity,
Down.
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 down. So in other words, it's not gonna be 180,000 in revenue, it's gonna be less.
About 168,000.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, I had actual numbers somewhere.
So every farm in town needs to complete the paper?
If they wish to be in the program, yes. And right now, we have, I think there was 30 applications.
Either 30 or 31, and all of them did
They did fill out the
fill out
paperwork.
the problem was that they did fill it out by October 1st. The fault was that the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance are supposed to approve them every 5 years under the ordinance, and that did not take place for the last 10 years. So the prior assessor was just giving them
A break on the actual
lower
assessment.
in order to make up the difference without having the board members approve it.
So the numbers he was using were incorrect, is that what you're saying?
I don't know.
I don't think they were incorrect. If they were, it was maybe a few dollars here or there, but
They
in
just
other
needed
words,
to
he
be
was taking
approved.
our mill rate and figuring what the property was worth and then reducing it by what it would have been had they got the abatement. Is what it is.
So they got the abatement without approval.
They got the abatement on without the approval, correct.
So where's the $11,000?
The $11,000 is the difference that, what the new assessor came up with versus what it would have been with the abatement. So, I mean, you know, you could, but I mean, it's not fair to just go ahead and pull the rug out from the people and say, hey, you as a group owe us another $11,000 because we didn't do what we were supposed to do.
So this has nothing to do with like planning and zoning has zoned a new use as
No.
agricultural?
No,
rather than
and
retail?
that's, right now, the way the ordinance is written, it's specific as to who qualifies and who doesn't, but that's being taken up now,
For this?
no,
Oh, okay.
in the future, for others that may qualify, besides just dairy farms and vegetable or fruit growing places. There may be other things added to that, but that's something that hasn't changed.
They're reviewing, the P and Z is reviewing that.
Well, they'll be reviewing it, the Board of Selectmen will be reviewing it.
Do we ever have any input?
Of course we can.
You have the right to
Just go to-
say yes or
go
no
to
if
the
you want to
meeting.
approve the abatement.
But yes, but when the
I mean,
abatement,
formally.
formally, when it comes to whether or not they receive the abatement, the way the statute reads, it's done in 10% increments up to 50%. So we as a board can say, no, we're only giving 30% across the board, or this one's getting 50%, that one's getting 30% because of the type of business.
But back to whether they're zoned retail or agricultural, does that impact? That's another,
That's totally different. That's totally different. See,
Well,
what-
yeah,
what-
community district.
Yeah, we don't even want to get into that now, because that doesn't affect anything this year.
Just to put this in perspective, this is $11,000 or $12,000 out of 14 million.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we're talking about here. So playing around with, you know, you're in like the third decimal place.
Right. And it doesn't, this is not really a time to bring that up, because it can get so deeply involved as to where it's going and everything else, and it's.
I think the point that we should stress, Mike, is that when we were sitting at this with the selectmen at their meeting, they were in favor of of approving the abatements along with the Board of Finance's approval. I think there's gonna be a joint meeting once these
Yes.
questionnaires come back, so that we both boards have the opportunity to review, because the town didn't follow its own ordinance, where no matter whose fault it was, they would like to honor it this one time,
Right.
and then move on in the
And go
future.
forward.
Yeah, I think that's the important point, that we don't go to 10 years
Yeah.
when we're under an ordinance that requires our approval.
We'll be having a meeting shortly with the Board of Selectmen, so.
No, but I agree. It's not the landowner's
No,
fault.
it's not their fault.
So what is the grand list number?
So,
The increase.
right now, the grand list is roughly $168,000 increase. Once we get a final number from the assessor, then we can go forward. But I would, if you're looking for something to base it on, right now, I would say you could safely say $168,000 is the increase.
Yep, thank you.
Anything else on that?
Well, it's also, Board of Assessment Appeals is meeting right now.
Yeah.
So there's some more, probably minor changes from reductions now.
First order of business is the 2019-20 budget presentation from the Board of Education.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Why are we even reviewing this tonight? I mean, we didn't see this budget until 2:30 this afternoon. There's been no time to actually review it, understand it, so that it can be properly reviewed, number one. Number two is just looking at the gross numbers here. This is a $1.15 million increase. I don't think there's anybody in this room who doesn't realize that that's 3 to 5 times what could possibly be allowed. To review this and take this as a serious proposal is a mockery of the process, and it's a mockery of this board. This one should have been out last week, not today. And it should bear some resemblance to reality. And neither of those are true. I mean, my suggestion would be, and that's all I can do is make a suggestion, is that we simply say, this budget is not reasonable, wasn't submitted in a timely fashion. Go back, cut the budget by about $700,000, come back here in 2 weeks with something that's based in reality, so that we've, at that point, reviewed the town budget. We have a budget from the Board of Ed that can actually be reviewed, so that we can understand where this whole budgeting process is gonna go forward.
Well, this is
That's my comment.
this is their first presentation of the budget, so this is our opportunity, once they make their presentation, to ask questions and to question what we may think is appropriate, and give them some recommendation to come back with us, to us in 2 weeks from now with a budget, with the combination of the town and our revenues, so we can see where we are before we have our town meeting, at which time then the people will all have a chance to give their say. And then, once that's over, we'll have our final budget meeting, and that's when we'll set the budget.
Well, that's right to my point, Mike, is that there's been no time to review this.
Well, that's what you're gonna get right now, is they're gonna put it out there. So, David, it's first presentation, so, I mean,
I got it at 3:45, I went through it. I mean, I had some time, I read through it, I mean, it's not rocket science, you can read through it, I mean, I looked at it, I mean, I have some questions, but, I mean, I think the board deserves the opportunity to give their thoughts. I mean, I've been through the process many times, this is what they feel is needed at that level. I think we all know that money's not available, not whatever that last number is, it's just, it's what it is, but I feel we should just give them the opportunity to go forward.
And Mr. Chair, could we ask that all questions wait till after the presentation?
well, I was going to find out who's presenting. Is that gonna be you?
Well, I want to thank you for the invitation. I think you've already heard this budget 3 times, Mike.
Twice anyway, yeah.
And Dave's seen it at least once. We have been working on this up until the February 28th Board of Education meeting, at which time we did make some changes. So the board budget that they approved on the 28th required some changes. Janice Thurlow, who will be presenting tonight, because she's put in so much work, made those changes and got them out to you today. Yesterday was sort of a wild card day. We had a little weather event, but again, we appreciate you inviting us, and Janice will walk you through page by page, give you the highlights, the lowlights, and you can ask us questions afterward. So
You'd like to hold the questions till the end, Janice?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so we'll hold the questions till the end, and Ms. Thurlow, the business manager from the school, will present the budget.
Thank you.
As Victor mentioned, the Board of Ed approved this budget last Thursday night. They reviewed it for a few weeks, and there were some cuts that were made. So we'll just go through this page by page. I apologize, I tried to get numbers on the bottom of this page, and it didn't work out for me, so. So the first page is of course, the members of the Board of Education, of which Mrs. Barb Marks is here tonight. Victor and I are here also tonight, and I don't see any other board member here, so. The next page, I thought I wanted to give you an overview of where our budget is in proportion. As everyone has always heard, salaries and benefits are one of the biggest items of our budget, because we are people, we are teachers, we can't teach our children with machines. So the budget with salaries is 36% of our budget, and that's salaries. And that's for administrators, teachers, paraprofessionals, custodians, support staff, substitutes. It totals all up to 36%. Along with salaries, you always have those things called benefits, which is payroll taxes, workers' comp, insurance, and all the benefits that we have to, per Obamacare, have to give medical insurance to anyone who works over 30 hours. So it's medical insurance, life insurance, and disability. That's another 11% of our total operating budget. Special education, this is excluding salaries, because I've already have them listed above. These are the additional services that we provide, either their textbooks or their tuition or their excess cost reimbursement factors into that. And the various transportation, all of that factors in, not transportation is the next line down, but all of the other things that we do, with the exception of salaries and benefits, is 9% of our budget. It's usually always a big percentage, but I include the salaries in the top line. Maintenance, that is all of the heat, the lights, and the repairs that we do to our building, to our two buildings. That is 2% of our budget. And then curriculum-related things, classroom supplies, replacement of desks and chairs, staff development, that's 3% of our budget. The biggest other item besides salaries and benefits is our high school tuition. We don't have a high school, so we have to pay tuition to wherever our children go. And in Woodstock, they go to Woodstock Academy. They can also go to a technical school, which does not cost us yet any money, but the governor didn't propose it yet this year, but it was proposed in previous governors to pay some sort of tuition for a tech school. That was not presented this year. So anybody that goes to a tech school, we're not paying for. And then we have VOAG, that is, we pay $6,800 for tuition for a VOAG student. And that is at filling that we have. We'll go further as far as how many we have in each school. But the Woodstock tuition went up 3.65% this year, not including the assessment. I'm keeping the assessment completely out of our conversation. So the Woodstock tuition went up 3.65%, and 98% of our students go to Woodstock Academy. So that's 33% of our budget is in Woodstock Academy. Is in high school tuition. The next page is our class sizes. In 17-18, you see how it actually worked out in that year with how many teachers we had. For the most part, we had classroom sizes. We had classroom teachers of 4 and 5 as you got into the higher grades. This year, we have the same amount of teachers, except this year's 8th grade class right now is 123. We started the school year with a little bit less. We've grown up to 123 in that class. So teachers means salaries. So all of these classrooms that we have are all manned by teachers as well as some support staff. So what I did for the projected year is I just moved everybody up a year, assuming that everybody's going to pass. I didn't build any anticipated, increase, because what I'm hearing coming to Woodstock, there are people that tend to move into Woodstock in the 8th grade. because they want to go to the academy. I don't know that, so, I didn't increase any projections in the eighth grade population. What we are proposing, what we are having problems with this year because of the big class, and we're seeing that the same amount of students are needed in the middle school. We feel we're kind of working with our teachers, working throughout the 5th through 6th grade. It's becoming, a bit of a challenge to maneuver all the rotations. So in the proposal, we've proposed to reinstate one of the teachers that we reduced from previous budgets. So we're requesting another 6th grade teacher. That's in the proposal. So then I'll walk you through each category as far as the categories as I mentioned before. The salaries is on the next 3 pages. And we break it down by certified salaries, non-certified salaries, and all other. So certified salaries are obviously the teachers and any administrator that requires a certification to hold the positions that they do have. So the category is the expenses are listed out by what our proposed budget is, what our current budget that we're working with is, and what we expended in 17-18. And the increase and decrease of is budget to budget. So the increases that you see, now presently we're in the 1st year of the teacher's contract. Next year, this budget relates to the 2nd year of the teacher's contract. So we already know what their increases are going to be. So their contractual increases are $140,000. Same teachers, just move them, based on their contract. That was $143,000. We had 2 teachers per contract. When they go from one category to another, they also get an increase. So we had 1 teacher that went from bachelor's to master's, and we had 1 teacher that went from master's to 6th year. That's a contractual increase. That amounted to $75-76 additional wages for the teachers. The reinstatement of the grade 6 classroom teacher, as I mentioned, estimating that it will be a master's 3, so that's $61,391. The music teacher in previous budgets has been reduced from a full-time music teacher to a .45. We're $36,662 to her salary. The early retirement, a few years back, we offered early retirement to some teachers, and that is slowly coming to the end. This budget year will be the last year. So last year we had $90,000 of teacher retirement incentives, this current year that we're in right now. Next year that goes down to $24,000, so that's a savings of $66,000 in that teacher retirement incentive. Next year that $24,000 is going to be a credit as well, will be all done for those teachers. We are proposing administrative staff reinstating the SRBI's curriculum coordinator that we had in previous budgets. That's $23,625. We're proposing that as an administrator. In years past, it was a certified teacher, but we're proposing that be an administrative position, which is a different certification. And we're also reinstating the assistant principal. That before was an assistant to the principal. We're making this an assistant principal, and then requiring a different certification as well. The next page is the non-certified staff, which consists mainly of the paraprofessionals. They are presently, as well as 2 other bargaining units, are in a negotiation. Their contract ends on the 30th of June, so we're presently in negotiations with them. So any lines that you see that don't have an increase, it's because I don't feel we should be putting what I'm estimating a budget to be, because I don't want them to use that as a tool to say, well, you budgeted this amount of money, so I want this money. So we leave it at the same dollar amount that the present year budget is, and I have budgeted an estimated amount for legal and contractual increases, and that's in the legal line that you'll see later in the budget for under the district category. But one of the biggest changes that we had in the paraprofessionals is that the new special ed director is kind of looking at our paraprofessionals, what they're doing, doing all kinds of training for them, so to make them more efficient in what they're doing with the students. And it's helping them out a lot. We also have some students that have moved on or don't necessarily need the full one-on-one or a number of services that they had in the past. So that is about 4 paraprofessionals that were either are or going to be vacant that we are not filling. So that is a savings of $111,000. Doesn't have a bracket on it, but it is a savings of $111,000. And again, the nurses and the occupational therapy, the media clerk, and the office salaries are in negotiations, so there's no budgeted increase on this line, it's in the district column. In the in the custodian maintenance, we reinstated a 0.5 custodian back into the district because we just needed to have that. The maintenance was falling, the regular maintenance was falling down, so we needed to free that maintenance person up to do all the lighting and stuff like that. So we are instituting a 0.5 custodian back in the budget, and that's why there's the net of the two. Plus there was also some changes as to where they went, where they were being assigned between the elementary school and the middle school. That's why you're seeing the positive and the negative. The third page of the salaries is other salaries. It's basically our tutors, our subs. Anytime a teacher is out, we need to have a sub in the classroom. We can't leave the kids alone. If they're going to a staff development, we need to have a sub in the classroom. So this is all the categories that we have for subs. Facilitators, mentors, and security constables, those are the people like you see out on the road, or they're security people that come into the dances that we have on Fridays. The mentors is a requirement for any new teachers. We have to have a senior teacher mentor the new teacher. That has this 2-year process. Several years ago, the state reimbursed us for that program. They took the funding for that reimbursement away, but not the requirement to do the program. So we still have to provide the mentors for 2 years. What is new this year to this budget is we're trying to reinstate a portion of this athletics program to reduce the pay for play. So we're putting in a portion of the amount, which is $30,843. That will be paying for the coaching stipends and the umpires for the games that we provide in our district. We have to pay for the umpires. So that $30,000 will pay for that salary as well. And we're also refocusing our summer program, and that's the special ed director is kind of wanting to do a different kind of a program, and we're estimating that that's going to have a savings of about $18,000. It's still in the works, but we were kind of thinking that we were going to have a savings in that. The next page is high school. Remember, that's 33% of our budget. So we have the tuition for Woodstock Academy is going up $345,000. Now, I said that our tuition was going up 3.65%. If you recall, last year, at least the notation on the budget that I have, there was $100,000 that was deferred from the budget. Our budget was not increased by the true amount of our tuition. So again, when you're comparing budget to budget, we now have to make that $100,000 up. In our tuition for this year, it wasn't, the actual expenditure was only $71,785. It was student, there was some changes in either the budget calculation or I didn't do the budget, so I know that the only difference that we have over what our present budget is only $71,785. So we need to move up last year's budget to at least recognize that dollar amount. We have 4 additional students that are going into the high school next year, so that tuition is $55,572. And the general increase for Woodstock Academy, the 3.65%, amounts to $218,517. So that totals the 345. So it's basically a 6% increase if you factor all of those things into the tuition. We have 13 students going to GOAG next year. We budgeted last year for 7. We actually have 10. So we're going to have to make up for those 3 that we didn't budget for that are actually there. And then we have 3 more 8th graders that are going to be going to the GOAG program. So that increase is $40,299. The elementary school, again, these are many line items, but the line items are not large in size. The first item is professional development. We've been lacking in some professional development. So the focus was on making sure that our staff does that. So we put in $5,000 for the elementary school, which will definitely be used. They're already wanting to go on some of these staff development that EastCon's putting on and various other programs are putting on very good learning programs for the teachers. The supplies for the classroom, last year, that was an area that we cut drastically. So we're wanting to get that back to where it should be. So that's an increase of $8,461. The same thing was done with the media budget last year. So last year, we only, the end result of the budget was $600, which was a cut from, if you look at what the expended year, that was $5,900, so that was a cut. So we're restoring back what the media has requested, and so it's a $3,400 increase. And we're looking for some replacement of chairs, just a few chairs and desks and chairs. It's not the whole grade classrooms, it's just a few desks and chairs. They're seeing a little bit of wear and we need to replace them. The next is middle school, and the areas of increase here, again, we cut classroom supplies last year, so we're restoring that, and that's a $6,900 increase. Again, in media, we took monies from that last year, we're restoring that, that's $2,900. Language arts, the new curriculum for that, not new curriculum, but the required SRBI requires us to have a novel series, and those are paperback novels that the students get to use and read and in the language arts program. And that's a $2,084 increase. And health curriculum, it says supplies wellness at the middle school. She's our health curriculum instructor. She's not requested monies in the past. This year she came up with a list of supplies that she would like to have us purchase, and that's the total of $3,960. Special education, again, this is not salaries. Most of these sections are decreasing. We have decreases in our tuition. Our new special ed director has been reviewing every one of our students that are outplaced. Is the placement proper? Not that we're shorting the student at all, but we're looking at the programs that are being offered and are they getting what they should be getting out of that program. So there have been some changes to that. There's also been, I think, 2 students who have aged out or will age out for this budget. So when the tuition decreases, then also the excess cost revenue will decrease. So that has a positive effect to our budget. So you see some of these negatives, but you see the excess cost being a positive because we're not going to be getting as much money back in our excess costs because we budget net and not gross. That's basically the tuition section of special ed. It's really the main driver of their reductions. So for Prop 46, that's not a factor. Special ed is not a factor this year. The district is 2 pages. So the very first page on the top is our health insurance. As you know, we went to partnership, starting July 1. We went from our self-funded plan to the state self-funded plan. That also in the budget was noted that that our consultants for our insurance, medical insurance had advised that our budget be increased by $307,000. The Board of Ed decided not to increase because of the changes that we were making, and that it may result in some increase, and that if it did, the health reserve fund could potentially be used to fund that, any overage in that line item. So that was another area where we budgeted less last year, and we budgeted based on the actual expenditures for this year. We budgeted $122,739 less. So in other words, this year's actual expenditures are 123 rounded, more than our budget. So, and then the state came through and they said, we don't know what the numbers are yet for the contribution increase, but if you're doing your budgets estimated 8%, the last 5 years it's been 4.5%. Last year it was 8%. They said budget 8%. We won't know until May. So we won't know what the actual increase will be until after our budget process is done. So as he said, as he recommended, I budgeted 8%, and that on top of, that would have been, if we had budgeted correctly, $190,689 increase in our medical insurance line. On the second page, it says regular ed legal services. This is where I mentioned that I put the estimated cost for salaries and legal services, which is an additional $47,133. That's what I'm anticipating the combination of both the legal services and the negotiations will approximately cost. Technology, again, we've gone away from using a lot of textbooks. We're now using technology. Study Island, Type to Learn, Brain Pop are some of the programs that we actually use. They're in the technology sector. The top part, the WES Internet, that's our fiber optic line that the state pays a portion of. A couple of years ago, we weren't paying anything for that. A couple of years ago, they said we have to pay a portion of that. So that's now, it's been in the budget for a couple of years, but I remember when it was free. Down at the bottom, you'll see that admin tech software district, that's going from $15,000 to $20,000 for a $4,800 increase. Our present software, our Infinite Visions, which is our accounting, payroll, human resource program, is presently located on our server in our building. And we are looking to put that in the cloud. It's going to be some additional setup, and it's going to be some additional fees we pay per number of users, so it's going to be an additional cost per user. But the benefit to that is that we don't need to maintain a server anymore, so if the power goes out and the generator doesn't kick off, we have a surge and the server fries. We have to buy an $8,000 or $9,000 server. This all will be done in the cloud. It will be redundancy of 3, which right now we have a redundancy of 2. The state is required. There will be more than 2, but they're fine with what we have right now. So going in the cloud, although it has its scariness for some people, I think will be the better for us to have our services there, and we won't have to worry about the hardware that will be in our building. Transportation, this is the transportation for special ed and regular ed, so this is not the exact number that I gave Karen for Prop 46. This is all transportation. Prop 46 only covers the regular ed transportation because the special ed transportation is calculated in the special ed section. But for budget presentation, I put all of the transportation on one sheet. And we do have, I spoke with the Public Works, John Navarro, he estimated a 6% increase in the cost per fuel. We reimburse the town for the fuel that our buses use. So that increase was $28,866. And our DATCO contract, year 3, is $60,562. The next line is maintenance, and as I explained before, it's a very small percentage of our total budget. This is where we have our heat, our lights, our custodial supplies. One comment that was made at the Board of Ed, our sewer usage is going down. It's just lower than, the actual amount was lower than budget. So I made the budget, this year's budget, to reflect more of an actual number than a budgeted number. So that's why that's going down. Repairs and maintenance, I'm trying to maintain as well as we can some of the repairs that we need to do. And but the heat, we're going down a little bit. We've spent some time with the HVAC people coming in trying to regulate some of our heating units, and it has saved, based on our bill, it has saved us some money too, and based on some of the teachers' comments and the principals' comments about our building, our rooms not being as hot as they were. I think they're getting the regulation of the rooms down to where they should be, which is using less fuel. And the final page is the summary page of each one of these categories that I mentioned. Salaries has a $161,000 in total increase, which is a 2% increase, but it is 36% of our budget. The high school tuition is a 7% increase. The elementary and the middle, they're small amounts of money, but when small amounts increase, it becomes a bigger percentage. So their budget, the $14,000 that the elementary school went up is a 21% increase, but $14,000 and a $19 million budget is, that's why the percentages are so large for as far as the increase, but it's a smaller portion of our budget. And you can read the rest as far as, but it's a total of $954,000 for an increase over last year's budget. Still in discussions as to who's going to be, how that's going to be paid for. If it's put in our budget, it's adding to the MDR, and if it's put in our budget, that's a 6.41% increase. But like I said, we are discussing how or where that money is going to come from. I don't foresee this going away. I think that we've received paperwork that it sounds, what the capital improvements that they plan to do is going to be a 2-year project for them. So we're going to be seeing this next year, and next year we'll be paying more because we'll have a population of 444, I think, in the high school, and then it will start going down. Next year is going to be the final year that we're paying high, and then we're starting to go down after that. So that is the budget in a nutshell. I'm willing to take any questions tonight or next week, or anytime you want to email me or call me or stop by my office. We can go through a few things. This is my first year doing this budget, so I've tried to look at everything to see what is out there and try to, it's been the desire to try to restore some of the things that we've cut over the years. So this is our first go at the budget.
Thank you. Questions?
I'll start, if I may. The Board of Ed has a contract with Woodstock Academy. I personally would like to take a look at that. I think it should be available. How does the contract provide for two things? Number one, the increase in tuition of 3.65%. And how does it provide for the assessment for the roof repairs?
I'm not sure what you mean by provide. What do you?
Well, does Mr. Sanford come to the Board of Ed and say, give us $212,000, we're putting roofs on? Or does he say, the contract allows me to pass this through to the Board of Education and the other 6 sending towns? Does he say, we're gonna charge you 6.35 or X% more per year in tuition? Or does he say, that's provided for in section 3.2.1 of the contract we have with you? How are these pass-throughs justified on a contractual basis? Or could the town say,
The contract right now requires that we pay the tuition increase set by the Woodstock Academy.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna come over here because I have a slight hearing issue. I'd like to make sure I get this right.
The contract provides that we are required to pay for the tuition increase set by Woodstock Academy Board of Trustees. We've never had the capital assessment before. This is the first time we've ever had a separate capital assessment. So that's something we've been discussing with Mr. Doherty, Mr. Alberts, and I think there was also a question going to the town attorney about it as well.
Is there any limit on the tuition increase that the academy can assign to the sending towns?
No.
No. They do a presentation to their Board of Trustees.
So, the board, the Board of Ed signed a contract that said you can charge us whatever you'd like and we'll pay it.
The Board of Ed signed a contract, I believe it was two or 3 years ago, that we agreed to pay the tuition to Woodstock Academy.
Whatever they decide is tuition.
There is not a limit in that contract that says they can only increase our tuition 1%, 2%. That limit is not there.
How long is this contract?
21.
Please, could you make a copy of that available? I would like to see.
It's a public document.
I understand that.
Okay.
We can send out a
You
copy.
have access to it.
Yep. We can send
You
out
can
a
find it faster than I can. And to your knowledge, there's nothing in that contract that allows for a pass-through of any capital expenditures.
There's no language that pertains
To
to that.
capital improvements.
The other question I have is as to kindergarten, because each year we always get the discussion as to half-year or half-day kindergarten or full-day kindergarten. My understanding that state statutes require half-day kindergarten in all schools in Connecticut, and a town can, if they so choose, provide full-day kindergarten. And Woodstock and 48 other schools provide full-day kindergarten. Could you provide, not tonight, but at some point in time, the cost differential between half-day kindergarten and full-day kindergarten? And along that line, I noticed that Woodstock has pre-K. And I don't believe pre-K is a state mandated level of education. I could be wrong. And on those same lines, could you provide information as to the cost of the 32-student pre-K program? That's all I have for questions.
Birth to 3 is a requirement for pre-K, so we do have to have some sort of a pre-K program. So that is a requirement, but that's special ed, so that's not, but we can get you the
So
numbers.
is that a special ed line item, or is that a pre-K, just standard elementary?
In this budget, it's in the it's in the pre-K line item, it's not
But is
special
it
ed.
more
There's
akin
more
to
to it
special
than,
ed?
there's more to it than special ed, but we can
Okay.
get that for you.
Any other questions?
This kind of goes along with Roy was just asking. Up until this year, the costs from Woodstock Academy were broken down into tuition and construction cost. I notice it's not in here this time. And in fact, when I talked to Woodstock Academy, they didn't know what I was talking about. Was construction cost a pass-through, as Roy was just talking about? Or was that just, what was it? Because it doesn't exist anymore.
I came from Canterbury, we had Woodstock tuition. I did not break the tuition down as Karen Monroe did. Karen Monroe has said to me that when she's contacted the state has said we needed to break that cost out of our tuition cost when we report that information to the state. So.
Well, what's that cost?
And then Joe Campbell left, and we have a new finance director there who is not aware of how that calculation is done yet. Whether he will, I don't know. So I don't know what that is. He doesn't know what that is. So for my purposes, I reported that as tuition and did not give a breakdown between the two.
And it was something Joe Campbell provided Karen every year.
Yeah.
Last year, I believe it was $400 some odd dollars.
Yeah.
But it was a number that he would report to Karen, she would report to the state.
I was told it was a worksheet that they had. I told their business manager that it was a worksheet that, Joe Campbell had. He hasn't been able to locate it, so.
Well, that actually makes sense because I tried to figure out what it was.
Yeah.
Nobody could figure it out.
And the state didn't require me in Canterbury to break it out, so.
But it goes to Roy's point, has there been pass-throughs in the past for something called construction costs? Because I can tell you, it goes back to at least 2002, because I had budgets at least that old,
Yeah.
and it was always there. So there's always been some kind of thing that was put in there. The other question I had was on health insurance. I just want to make sure I heard it right. Are you planning right now for this year that the health insurance costs are going to be something other than 1.323 million in actual accrued cost
For this year,
for this year? Because I thought I heard you say something about it was considerably higher than that.
what I said was that the notation in the budget
Right.
was that the potential, if the actual expenditures were more than budget, that
They could come out of the reserve.
it would come out of, it potentially could come out of the reserve. I'm not
Oh,
proposing,
you're not
I'm not
supposing that it
proposing
is?
that at this time.
Oh, okay,
The
because.
year's not done yet.
That gets into 10-22 violations and all kinds of other little interesting tricks. I thought I heard that it was already planned to be that way, which would be.
I'm not proposing that at
Okay.
this time, but that was what was mentioned in the budget document from last.
Yeah, I remember it being mentioned, and I also remember it, I remember bringing up that it's a 10-22 violation. So enrollment is down 46 students in WPS, or 5.4%. And we've got a whole bunch of ads on people. And just an interesting observation. And I had a question for Karen Fitzpatrick. What's our roof project debt service?
How much is it?
Yeah,
I believe the principal is like 116,000 for 10 years, and then the interest, goes down less, but altogether, like 1.160 million that we bonded. 1.160.
all right, so we're at that cost to us, that's really an expense, a school expense covered by the town.
The town pays it because the town owns the buildings.
Right, but it's a cost of education, is about $150,000 a year over that 10-year period.
Yes.
Ballpark.
Yep, with interest, yep.
And it's $116,000 for principal and $21,800 for interest in this year's budget.
Yeah. Okay, so it's actually more
It goes
like.
down a little bit each year.
Huh?
The interest goes down a little bit each year.
All right, so it's more like 130,000 then.
this past year was a little like 152, now this upcoming budget will be a little bit less. So yeah, I would say it's approximately about 150,000 and I would
Okay,
leave it
all
there.
right, all right, all right, it is. All right.
Anyone else have any questions?
Assistant principal. Middle school, elementary, middle school?
Yeah, as for the middle school, it's a part-time position. We were, you know, was it $23,000, so we're looking at a couple of hours in the morning, possibly if we could combine it with that curriculum. Our BI person, get a retired administrator who does not need benefits. We were hoping that we could somehow manage that and give some support at the middle school.
You're reducing the heat in your middle school by 14 grand, just by turning down the thermostat? Basically, in a nutshell?
It was redoing the HVAC system. They did an extensive bit of work in the HVAC system and regulating when the heat turns on, when it turns off. But it could be a combination of the budget being a little too high from last year's versus what I looked at was this year's expenses and where do I think they're going to fall.
That heating system at the middle school is now well over 20 years old, and Brian, we actually had a contracted service come out and they rebalanced all of the equipment, and we've seen significant savings, and the teachers have noticed a big difference as well. So the heat is balanced, it's not too hot or too cold, it's much better.
Go ahead, Glenn.
So under transportation, it's a $60,000 increase from DATCO this year. Have they been going up? We've been with DATCO at 2 or 3 years now.
3 years.
Is that a typical increase?
That's what when they contracted with us 3 years ago.
Okay,
they
that was
gave
what
us-
they agreed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were expecting that?
Right, right.
And also, so for the VOAG students, you're saying there's 13 at 40,000, so they're about $3,100 each.
That's $6,800. The 41 is the increase over budget.
Okay. So their cost per student
It's
is
about $6,800.
Jeff, you have any?
They got mine already.
Dave?
Yeah, let's go back for a minute to construction costs. Try not to make things worse than they already are. So when we get our bills from the Woodstock Academy, we get a bill with 2 lines on it,
No.
then where do we come up with a number for construction costs? Is that internal, or is that from the academy?
From what I understand, it was a worksheet that Joe Campbell had, and he somehow calculated, but I'm not sure how that was calculated. He somehow calculated what the construction cost was. I'm assuming it's something like a depreciation or expenditure, or,
Right.
you know, capital improvement, or, you know, something that the academy pays, so he pulls that dollar amount out of the budget. But he's not here for me to ask that question.
Right, and forgive me, what I'm trying to figure out here is I've read the contract, and I know that that's not part of it. And what I'm trying to figure out is we get a bill that says, you owe me $12,000 per student plus a charge, right? Is that what happens?
It just says $12,000.
It says it, but somehow we're able to put a name on this charge
An accounting.
and separate it.
An accounting entry.
And that's what I'm trying to figure out, is it really a construction charge as a part of the overall tuition?
Right.
You know, what is it?
It's
It's
part
one of
the-
those two things we don't
right,
seem to
it's
know.
part of the overall tuition. Like I said, I've always treated it as tuition.
Completely understand.
And Kevin Chambers at the State Department of Education and the Financial Department, he required Karen,
No.
perhaps because it was Woodstock Academies in Woodstock, that may be what differentiates it from Canterbury, but we were asked to provide that separate number for state reporting purposes. Joe Campbell would provide that number, that calculation, but when we got the bill, it would always be just one number. We would break it out for reporting purposes,
All
essentially.
right, so they would give you information which would allow you to break it out.
Right.
Correct.
After.
Right, after the fact.
One bill. All right. So, based on that, all the sending towns get the same tuition rate,
Right.
right? So, is there any work being done with all the sending towns to gain an understanding of this? What I originally heard was a one-time capital, now we're up to 2 times.
It's gonna be longer than 2
Yeah,
times.
I would say.
Right, I mean, so is there any work being done with all the sending towns, the boards of education, the boards of selectmen, whoever, boards of finance,
Karen
to
has
work
some-
on this before?
Karen
It's
has
not
some
one
numbers.
division.
Yeah, so about, I think it was about a week or so ago, Mike Alberts and the other surrounding towns, first selectmen met with Chris Sanford, and they had a discussion about the construction costs. They, I should have provided it, and I apologize, but there was a handout from Woodstock Academy that had a breakdown for the next year of what the different costs were going to be. It's about I don't know, maybe like a little over $1 million for the construction of the different roofs and the storage tank units and stuff like that. And a lot of the talk of that too was finding a way like how not to include it in the Board of Ed budgets because it can increase the MBR, and I think they're all trying to figure out how to do it as well. I don't think anybody has really come up with any type of solution at this point, but I know that the selectmen were speaking with, Chris Sanford, trying to get a consensus of how all the other schools are gonna be able to handle this, the sending towns. Unfortunately, Mike's out of town, he couldn't be here, he would have been the better person, who could have probably provided more information. But I know that the selectmen have met with him, trying to, figure out how to move forward with this and what to expect, and we were told 2 years, and possibly down in the future, but right now the focus is on the roofs and the, removal of the underground tanks and the installation of the above-ground tanks over the next 2 summers, and the cost was like $1,069,000. And they had a breakdown of how many students attended the academy, from the surrounding towns, I think about 945,000, I'm sorry, 945, and then the, I'm always thinking dollars, sorry. And the, exchange students was about 135 students, so they're gonna pay for it too. So they're, together, make up the 2 years, like 535,000 per year over 2 years. Broken down into monthly installments, we don't know.
So they want all this money basically up front to pay for this, rather than borrowing and paying over.
I asked that question too, I guess, I was wondering if they could finance themselves, and I guess what I was told, that's not a consideration, and I don't know why.
The finance subcommittee said it did not want to do that. It wanted the finance subcommittee for Woodstock Academy. Said that it did not want to go out to warrant, that it wanted to be able to pay for these.
Why?
Because then they'd have to pay for it, not us.
That's right.
Actually, that's not true.
No, we'd pay for it
No,
at
we
the end anyway.
would pay for it anyway, but the
They just
reason
build
why
it.
you wouldn't want to do that is they expect, and we should expect, that this is gonna be an ongoing capital requirement. And what they're trying to do is set something up, so it's just addressing the ongoing need. So it makes a lot of sense from that perspective. But the thing that's really the issue for us isn't that in reality, because like I pointed out, that's a couple $100,000. We got considerably more than that in debt service related to the school as of right now. The real issue is that's $212,000. That's going to be a this year expense. But we're only going to have a few $100,000, like maybe only a couple of $100,000 of ceiling. That's what the issue really is with that, because that's going to eat up a big chunk of the ceiling, unless it can be done in a different fashion, but if it's done in a different fashion, like taking it through the CNR account or something along those lines, the problem with it becomes an annual deal. So you got those two things that are, you gotta run right into them.
You know, where I was going with this whole thing is that a lot of effort gets put in every year at this board and the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education, and then minimize and be frugal with the dollars from citizens. And now we're getting a sudden, rather large bill without a sunset clause, or perhaps even, as I think Roy maybe alluded to, an enabling clause. And I'm very concerned with that this is just the camel's nose coming through the tent flap. Very concerned. And it's not so much about roofs, or that they gotta do the work, or that we shouldn't contribute towards it, but this whole method where, here's the bill, you need to pay it, and that's that. There's no discussion. Figure it out.
The Academy's argument would be that there is a discussion because we have one seat on the Board of Trustees.
I would tell them,
That's
bah.
ridiculous.
Here's the real.
400 students out of 1,200, you have one seat.
Yeah, that's baloney.
Here's the real argument, Dave, you've read the contract, Roy, you're
Yes.
gonna be extremely disappointed when you see the contract.
Yep.
Because it's not much of a contract. It's like a couple pages. The real issue is the Woodstock Academy has to maintain a competitive situation. That's their constraint. Not somebody sitting on the board, not this board. It's if they don't maintain a competitive position for education, those 945 students can become 600 students. And when it does, their business model collapses. That's what their issue is. Not what somebody sitting on the Board of Trustees has to do. And it's just not an issue. I mean, you gotta take like 2 giant steps back and picture how this whole thing works. If they're not competitive, they're out of business. We're back to where we were in 1983,
But we're not
when there
Woodstock
was
Academy.
400 kids in the whole school. Or not even 400, it was 300.
It's certainly, I think, important to understand that, but we're not the Woodstock Academy Board of Trustees. We're in charge of educating all the children in Woodstock, and that also includes our elementary and our middle school. So I certainly sympathize with them and the business model that they are working under, and they need to stay competitive because that only benefits our students. Our priority is pre-K to 12.
Well, suppose you had to pay.
Mr. Doherty, do you want to continue with the meeting, or do you want to?
No, I think we'll move on. Any other questions regarding the budget as it was presented?
Not today.
All right, next order of business is public comment. Anybody? Go ahead,
I
Karen.
guess I public, I just wanna make a note that our budget, the Board of Selectmen's budget may be a little bit delayed as well because they have not yet approved theirs. They should be approving it at their, regular meeting on Thursday, March 7th. And then, of course, the town hall is closed on Fridays, and if they make any changes, it would be me doing that. I will have it to you by Monday. Just so you are aware that ours may be a little delayed, you know, it just goes by when they can be approved, and it has not yet been approved.
Could you please identify yourself for the,
Good evening, Greg Klein from New Sweden Road. Glad to see some New Sweden Road almost has a quorum here, guys. 4 of us. Couple comments. I'd be glad that somebody brought up the fact that there's only one representative on the Board of Trustees who was elected. It would be important to have somebody from, maybe from the Board of Finance on that board with a vote up there. Not that I want to make more work for anybody here, but it would be, then you'd have some answers instead of sitting here at what's this, and not knowing, and going to them with things that you know are needs down here that they should be addressing. It's just not right, as pointed out. Another thing that you might be, some of you probably know, I know some of you know this, but you know that we could save, we should be saving almost $200,000 of the tuition money, because there are children that go to the high school that live in tax exempt houses that owned by Woodstock Academy, and there's no tuition paid by anybody except us for those kids to go there. They're not our kids. There are children in Woodstock, but they're paying tuition to Woodstock Academy. So their children, or their employees, live in those houses and dorms. They go to the academy, and we have to pay for that. That's not right. That's crazy. Plus, there's 6 of them last year, and there were 13 and it went to the middle school and the elementary school, and that's another, we said $87,000 altogether, or something like that. I mean, so altogether, that comes up to close to $200,000. And then I brought the other points up to you guys last year, about this time, about the money that we should be getting as a reimbursement. And as the numbers from out of town and out of the country and wherever the post-grad basketball play, they're all here, and our taxes are paying for fire protection and all these other town municipal services that we're providing. And Sanford asked me to meet with him and talk. He said, how am I gonna pay for that? I said, very simply, Chris, you charge the towns that are coming here. He says, I can't raise the tuition to the Canterbury and Pomfret. The hell you can't. That's gotta be done. I know that Albert's met with him once, and it's gone nowhere. I think it's time that an effort from this community was a message was sent, and more than a message, an effort to get more people on that board. I mean, where are the people that are from Woodstock who are on that board? Where are they? Nobody here, right? Are you on the board?
Unfortunately, their bylaws don't allow any more members on the board, and they actually changed the bylaws. We used to have 2 representatives, and now we're down to 1.
Right. But I mean, there's a lot of things about it. How much of the tuition bill went for the new uniforms for the military appreciation night for the hockey team? They can, sure they probably use them, but they bought special new uniforms for the hockey team for military appreciation night. I'm a veteran. I appreciate when people recognize the military, but come on, it's a public high school that's starving, needs money. Somewhere that was in our tuition. Lots of other things, but I'll let you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just think if you're talking about you're talking about the academy with, $200,000, I think that we all sit in this town and watch the fair. A couple $1 million business, it's tax-free. That if you look at the Brooklyn Fair, they write a check to the town of Brooklyn for $25,000, $30,000 in lieu of taxes. And, we don't get jack out of the fair except we all leave town.
Pomfret School gives $30,000 a year to the town of Pomfret.
Conversation is supposed to be through the chair.
Excuse me, all right.
You have a chance to speak again.
That's my point.
Okay. Now you.
Pomfret School, like you said, Mr. Schultz, $30,000 to the town of Pomfret, $10,000 for the fire department, $10,000 for Pomfret Community School, and $10,000 for the highway or something like that. It's like that, but there's money there. Yeah. But I just think you look at it the other way around. Instead of them giving us money, give us a credit. We should be getting at least $200 per student credit for the municipal services, at least. It's probably more because everything's changed and gone up since I did those numbers last year. And maybe I didn't do them right, but I did it how I could figure it out. And Karen helped me with some of the numbers a year ago.
All right, we have the lady behind you.
Hi, Michelle Salvis. I just wanted to say, I think, and I know that you guys have researched this, but it's my understanding from talking with some people at Woodstock Academy that some of that academy assessment is the construction, what was previously part of the construction. I know that the roof and the tank replacements are in that assessment, but that I think there might be some confusion because the comment that I had heard was that some specific towns had asked to have the construction taken out, and some towns asked for it just as a straight budget item. So just whatever it's worth. My question, I guess what I want to comment to the town, I think the Board of Ed has done a fantastic job with their budget. They're up against, they're in between a rock and a hard place every single year, and I think this brings our schools closer back to where they should be. The gentleman that was asking before about going to half-day kindergarten and cutting pre-K, let me just tell you, as the mother of a first grader, that would be a catastrophe to this town and to our kids. I mean, with my daughter having gone to full-day kindergarten and now being halfway through first grade, I can tell you that if she did not have that first full-day kindergarten, you just can't do that to the kids. It's just, you can't. But on top of that, I was looking over the academy budget, and one of the things that I was noticing, or actually I guess on our overall budget, if you take out, I guess when we do the Prop 46 calculation, you take out transportation and special ed, is that correct? They come out of the total proposed budget?
Increases above the previous year.
Right. And just looking at those numbers, I mean, it looks as though our increase is actually about, is it 960,000 or 572,000 over last year, or $960,000 over the total. But again, I just want to urge the Board of Finance. You know, my husband and I happened to be driving through town the other day, and we stopped to get lunch, and there was, you know, a brand new truck for the town garage with the extended cab on it, and we're both kind of laughing ourselves, going, how many people are going to be driving around in that thing? You know, if we're going to look at places where we can cut money, our schools is not the place to do it. I'm a former educator. I have a master's degree in education. I go in and I talk to every single one of my daughter's teachers. I talk to the administration as much as I can to find out what they need and how they're doing. And it's embarrassing to be in the town of Woodstock and have schools like this. And I know that a lot of, and you know, maybe this is one of the problems. You look at the Board of Finance. Where are the parents of the kids who are watching this happening right now? It's infuriating and it's frustrating. And you know, somebody was saying before, oh, let's cut the pre-K, or cut the kindergarten to half grade and see what the cost is going to be. Well, along with that cost, why don't you figure out how many people are going to move out of town because of that? Because I would be one of the first ones on board with that. And it's extremely, extremely frustrating to live in this town and then look at Pomfret and see what they're providing to their kids, and look at Eastford, who the top 4 graduates from Woodstock Academy, if it wasn't last year, the year before, were from Eastford. And here we are in Woodstock saying, let's cut our kindergarten. I'm just sick and tired of listening to this every single year, and I'm sick and tired of the Board of Ed having to get grief over what the Woodstock Academy is doing. Stand up for them and help them. That's what you guys are here for, and that's what we're here for, and everybody needs to stop blaming everybody else and find a solution. Tired of it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Smart, 4 Timberland Drive, very close to New Sweden Road. First off, I concur enough on that, but mostly I'm standing up to thank the Board of Education for continuing to look out for the best educational needs for our town. Their job is not to come up with a number that will get passed at referendum. Their job is to come up with what pieces of educational requirements will see our children be educated the best they can. And as they've already said, this is somewhat cut from where they'd like to be. And I know it's not going to be anywhere close to this when it comes to the budget referendum. But you know, I commend their efforts, and I want them to continue and not be dissuaded by people who say, you know, meet this minimal number. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I do have one more comment I just have to add. Looking over the numbers for next year for the class sizes, I've been noticing, having conversations with my daughter's teacher in first grade, classes are overwhelmed in size. You can see she's at, there's 22 kids per class this year. Next year it's going to be the same 22 kids per class. But if you go down to grade 8, where there is the same number of students, they have 5 teachers per class. I understand that has to do with how the classes are broken down. There's separate language, you know, teachers for everything else. But my question would be, is where do we really need an overstaffing? In 2nd grade or in 8th grade? Just wanted to point that out.
Okay, anyone else?
For the Board of Finance and Education on that, if we were to cut teachers in 7th and 8th grade, we're not cutting a teacher, we're shortcutting a program. So that's
Right.
why you have 5 teachers in those grades.
All right, move on to other from the board. Anybody have anything?
We still have the resolution to the missing 74,000.
We're still waiting for that. That's,
I just,
hasn't died. It's between the auditor and the attorney.
right, the last meeting that we actually had, I was to draft a letter, I did draft a letter, but it got from Mike to the town attorney and the auditor, and hopefully we'll get an answer to the question, because there's also some, I mean, it's the issue about the non-lapsing account that has to be addressed as well.
Anything else? Correspondence and announcements, the only thing I have is our next meeting will be next Tuesday night, and that will be the presentation by the Board of Selectmen.
I move to adjourn.
Mr. Lesser? Thank you, sir. We have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?